Alright, hey, Sprocket here again. Good morning. Well, at least it's morning here. I figured we'd do something a little bit different today. Oh, what you're seeing flying around is Bondo dust. I just blew things out, and apparently it's still moving around, which I can't see with my eyes, but apparently the camera's picking up. Anyhow, so, sorry about how close that is, but see right here, this is called the sector gear. Now this goes in behind the ignition switch here. When I first got the car, I had no key. So I had to basically destroy this piece out of here. And what ended up happening is, as I was chiseling away at this so I'd be able to turn the steering wheel to move the car, the sector gear was right behind it. And that's what actually moves the rod that goes down to the ignition switch. And I cracked it, and it's not in good shape anymore. So went ahead and got a new one. Now, as you can see, this is genuine GM, so you know it cost a little bit more. But I got it through OPGI. It's Original Parts Group. Got a bunch of other stuff from them too. But oh, and at some point here soon, we're also going to be doing the other side as far as the front suspension, because I finally got my other spring isolators too. But yeah, I don't remember if I did any filming when I had this steering wheel apart before, so we'll bring you along for the ride. Okay, so there are 4 screws that hold your horn button here on. Sorry again for being so close. It's kind of unavoidable with how close this thing is. So you got your horn wires that come up out of here. Okay, now these are your horn button contacts. Now if you look, bottom screw comes through here. Alright, that mounts right there, both sides. Now if those contacts are not in there, you don't have a good ground for the horn. So you got to make sure that those are lined up when you go to put those screws back in. Now obviously the wires don't come off of here. You have to pull them out of here. There is, well, here, we'll just show you. Very carefully, just pull that out. Okay. Now if you look, this thing will show it. It's hard to see it. Come on, focus you. See the little rib right there in the middle of that little plastic ring? That's actually what holds that in place. Now inside there, you can see there's a spring. That's spring loaded to keep that in place. And then this little brass contact via that brass spring connects the power to it. So that's your power side, so you want to make sure that never touches this, because this is the ground side. That completes the circuit, makes the horn work. Now, to get the steering wheel off, steering wheel, get this nut off of here, and then there's 2 screws here, or 2 threaded holes I should say, sorry. There's a press, I guess it would be a puller, either way, that you put 2 bolts through, which I already have the puller. I tell you what, it's a lot easier than the way I used to do it, which was to bring this nut out flush and then hammer on it while I'm pulling on the steering wheel. If you can avoid doing that, don't do that. Just buy the tool. But I'll show you once I get the tool set up how it works. Alright, so this is the tool I was referring to. It's OEM brand 25200. That's your part number. That's what it looks like. Comes in a package like this with multiple bolts. Well, these are the ones we're going to be using on mine. Just wanted to make sure you got that part number in the event you wanted to get your own. Alright, so this is what it looks like once it's set up. Be ready to pull it. Now, in here, you want to make sure you got real good thread engagement. At the very minimum, you want those threads threaded in at least the diameter of the bolt, which is a 5/16 bolt. I've got it a lot further than that. But the other thing you want to make sure of is that these are both in the exact same distance. So when this thing pulls, it pulls evenly and straight out. So then all you do is get your socket, boop, and ratchet. There, make sure it's on tighten. Okay. Alright. Make sure it's snug down. I said tighten. There we go. Now, the other thing, you got to make sure your steering wheel is locked. Otherwise, it's just going to spin on you. And then stop it from doing this, because that needs to be centered on there. It's not good. It's hard to do one-handed, but get that centered up again. Okay. Pretty good. Okay, now, this is on a taper. You'll see in a minute. There's splines in here that this fits in a certain way to keep the wheels going straight when the steering wheel's straight across, okay? So there's a specific way that this goes onto the steering shaft there. So you got to tighten this up. It's going to fight you at first, and then it'll get real easy. Whoop. And then, you know it's off. Alright, so, once you're done with your tools, I always find it best to put them back so they're not laying all over the place, because then you start getting a mess like this. Alright, now the next step on mine, there are these 3 screws that hold, on mine, that steel plate on. Later models, that's just a plastic that clips on there, and you just pop it loose. See, it's got little tabs that you gotta release, and then it pops off. But on this one, it's a steel piece. So, once I get that off, I'll show you what I got. So, the steel plate only goes on a certain way as well. Obviously, this right here is for the horn button piece there. But, there's a little tab on the back side here. See it sticking down through? That fits into this recess right here. So this goes on a specific way as well. Now, the screws that hold this on, they are extremely small, as you can see. So, unless you got something, like me, I'm using the pocket in this here, well, whatever this piece of clothing is, I can't remember, but to hold it in, a magnetic tool tray would be perfect for this, so that way these things don't go running away on you. Because little pieces like that have a tendency of growing legs and disappearing. So, now, we've got this piece. Now, this is held in with a snap ring. Come on, focus. You can just so see it right in there. Now, you have to, this is spring-loaded. There's a pretty heavy spring behind this plate. Now, this is for the steering lock, which you can see right there. Okay? Which barely is sticking through right now for some reason. I may have to adjust that. Of course, that could be that sector gear that's giving me grief too, because I had a problem with that earlier. But anyway, you have to compress this and then get the snap ring out. Now, the way I used to do it, before I got the right tool for it, is I would push this in by hand and get a pick and screwdriver in there and get that thing loose. That really hurts your fingers after a while, so I got a hold of this piece, which I don't know, is there a part number on this one too? Yes, there is. I don't know if you're going to be able to read it, but... Ow! Bright light! Focus! Another OEM part, or brand. 25134 is what it looks like. So what this does is... you take your piece right here, and you thread it onto the shaft. Now you want to try to avoid that horn button. Okay? This is another thing that's hard to do with one hand. Now you may have to back this here butterfly nut off a little bit. Okay? Now you want to thread this in while trying to keep that straight. That's why I said you want to... two hands is a lot easier to do this with. But what you do is you get that as far on there as you can. Oop, sorry about the finger in the way. Okay. That's, again, you want to get real good thread engagement. Okay. Okay, now that's bottomed out, so that's not going anywhere. So you see this is still loose. Now you line this up. What I like to do is to get it to where you can see, maybe you can see the opening of that snap ring, is I will line this up basically parallel with the shaft. And then what you do, whoop, where is it? There it is. Tighten up this here butterfly nut. Okay, double check, make sure you're more or less even. And then all you do is, oops, apparently I didn't get that all the way tight. Now you tighten up this here butterfly nut. As you can see, it is compressing. So now I got access to this snap ring right here. So then, like I said, you get a pair of snap ring pliers. Sometimes you can get in there with those. If not, the old-fashioned way of doing it is to get a real small screwdriver, maybe a pick, and basically you got to spread this out and slide it up the shaft, because you need to release the tension of the spring that's holding this thing in there. Alright, so once you get snap ring loose, as you can see I got it loose, basically just back this off. And like I said, you're relieving the tension. Man, it's going to be like super zoomed in this whole video. So you just unthread this, releasing the tension on that. Which, yeah, be careful because, like I said, they're putting those threads in a strain because of they're still being under spring tension. It's interesting. Why is that not coming up? Oh, that's why. Huh.
Did you forget?
No. Apparently, you gotta make sure you lubricate this thing because as I was backing the one off, the other one was tightening up, which is never good. Alright, there we go. Now we got the tension off of it. I wondered why that was turning so hard. Okay, so you can get your tool off of there, then you get your snap ring. Again, a magnetic parts tray would work great, or a pocket. So then this plate comes off very gently, and of course this one here, it only goes on one way, because there is a big spot, which I'll show you shortly. Come on, focus. See, all of them are uniform except for one. This one right here. It's a little bigger. So that only goes on one way. And you got to make sure that, because this thing is dished, as you can see, also only goes on one way. The only thing that changes is where your horn button piece comes through here. That's the only adjustment you have as far as putting the steering wheel on there to make sure it's lined up and the wheels are going straight. So this here is your horn button ring. Now you can see on the back side here, it's a brass ring that goes all the way around. And there's that spring, just tried to fall out on me. So what you want to make sure you do when you put this back together is put a little bit of dielectric grease or some kind of grease on that brass ring, because that thing is constantly in contact with this button right here. So you want to make sure it's lubricated. And that exposes your turn signal cam. Okay. Now you got to pull that out too. You got to get this turn signal arm off of here. Got this little Phillips here. Then there are 3 Phillips. One there. There's one there. And then this one in here. And then you can slide this turn signal cam this direction, and you got to peel it away over top of the steering shaft here, because there's a wiring harness that goes from this all the way down through, and then the plug's down underneath here. So once you get that done, then you got access to get to your ignition switch to remove it. Alright, so like I said, you got to get this to pull away. Now something I forgot. That hole right there is for your 4-way flasher. That right there is the 4-way flasher. You'll have to depress that in order to be able to pull this thing out. Otherwise it jams up on the housing there. Now something I found out when I replaced this ignition switch in it, I had to look on YouTube to find somebody that had figured it out before me. Down in here, before I started on anything, that was completely filled in with this pot metal. You couldn't see that gap right there. Inside that gap is the button that you need to depress to be able to slide this out. I didn't know that. And all the documentation I said you had to depress that button, but without gently breaking that out, you couldn't see that button. You didn't know it was there. So, for those of you that have these old Buicks, Chevys, I think all of the, whatever body this thing is, I can't think of it right now, but they're all set up that way from the factory. If it's never been messed with as far as the ignition switch, that casting is over top of that. So you have to make a gap there to be able to get to the button. Alright, so this is the button that you need to depress. As you can see, it sticks up further than the casting. So you stick your real thin screwdriver in there and you depress this. You see it flushes it out, and that allows you to pull this out of the housing. Now, it doesn't matter if you have the key in it or not. You can see how chewed up this is because I had to, like I said, I had to destroy the old switch to get it to be able to move. So that white thing right there, that's the sector gear. That's what I'm replacing right now. So I'm hoping that I can just slide that out of there and just slide the new one in. I'm not exactly sure because last time I had this whole thing all loose and stupid, so I got to figure out how exactly to do that because I've never replaced that gear. Alright, so here's the old one. As you can see, right there, this is broke off. Should have another ear on it like this side. Come on, focus. There it goes. Now, you'll notice there's a certain number of gears or teeth here, and then you got this flat one. The way to know you have this thing incorrectly is when this is in lock position, your button should be flush with this outer housing. Okay, no higher, no lower. And plus, the switch in the back has positions where it clicks into, like when you turn the key, you hear it click, click, okay? That's the switch down at the bottom there attached to the steering column. This rod, where this pin is for the steering lock, goes all the way down to that switch, and it gets connected. There's a section of it here that's flat and behind here that has teeth that match up with this. And there is a big slot in it right here that needs to line up for this thing to turn its full travel. So you got to make sure you have that lined up right when you go to put this in here. Now, I took notice on this one, my turn signal cam here, because that part's done. That's in place, that's all done. So I took notice on my turn signal cam here, and how well you can see this, but this plastic, nylon, whatever it is, you see it's all dried out and starting to flake off. Well, it's also, right here, come on, focus, it's got a crack. It runs all the way through it. Now this screw right here is what holds my turn signal arm on, or turn signal lever, sorry. This right here, okay? So that screw holds that in there. Now that being cracked means it's time to replace it. Now, I don't remember if the new ones come with these springs or not. But if it doesn't, or even if it does, you want to make sure you save these springs. Because these by themselves are hard to come by, and this is what causes, when you turn the wheel and then it comes back, that's what the canceling part is. It turns the turn signal off, because on the back of this, oops, there went my spring. Yeah, it's down there. On the back of this, you got these, whoa, that's hard to see, alright, with the light on. But you got this nub and this nub, okay? Those nubs will ride in here and bump these springs, and it'll put this back to the park position, or basically in the middle of this slot here, to where there's no turn signal on. So, what happens a lot of times when the turn signal lever doesn't return to the center position, it's because one of these springs broke. Okay, just an FYI for those of you who might have that issue with one of these older ones. If this spring breaks, that's why this lever doesn't want to come back up or come back down. Getting a hold of those springs by themselves, Dorman does make a kit that has just the springs in. It's a little help section piece. I have it around here somewhere. If I find it, I will give you the part number. So that way if you need just springs, you can find that Dorman part and you can get just the springs. So you don't have to buy a whole cam kit to get new springs. But I have to hunt it up first. So then reassembly is the same as disassembly, only the opposite. So pretty much that's how you swap out that sector gear and all this other stuff. Hope that helps you out. Have a good one. Quick tip. I forgot to mention, anytime you're putting in a screw or a bolt, always back off first until you feel it clunk. Then you know the threads are engaged. That's the clunk. Okay? That way you don't cross-thread the screw or bolt. Makes it easier, especially when you're going into pot metal, aluminum, whatever you want to call this.